Yellow and green, stick around and you'll see what I mean. There's a mountain top that I'm dreaming of. If you need me, you know where I'll be. I'll be riding shotgun underneath the hot sun, feeling like a someone. I'll be riding shotgun underneath the hot sun, feeling like a someone. I'll be riding shotgun underneath the hot sun, feeling like a someone. I'll be riding shotgun underneath the hot sun, feeling like a someone, a someone, a someone, a someone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Let me just get to my notes real quick and get us started. Okay, welcome. Thank you all for being here. We can start off with some introductions. So my name is Kayla Hoy. I am one of the student advisors with WASEN and on the west side of the mountains. We also have Becca Tibbetts. Becca, if maybe you can send engage, send a wave or some hearts or something. So Becca is the student advisor on the east side of the mountains. And for regional coordinators, we currently have a vacancy for the North region, but I'll be covering that inbox. For King region, we have Cassandra Cardenas from UW Seattle. And South Sound, we have Jordan Burke-Haskell from University of Puget Sound. Our Columbia regional coordinator, Richie Martinez from Columbia Basin. And another vacancy with Eastern region that Becca will be manning that email. So yes, that's the team right now. And thank you to advising committees, speakers, sponsors, and all of you attendees. Also, we have Tom, who is manning the Zoom at the moment, tech support, and Susie, event planner and lunch coordinator. So be looking out for an email from Susie at Well Planned Events for DoorDash codes after the event. Okay, next slide. And I would like to acknowledge that we are all on traditional land of the First People, and I would like to honor the Indigenous resilience of past, present, and future. We have people from all corners of the state here with us today. If you are not sure about the Indigenous history of where you are currently located, there's a link for you to find out some more information. I can't see the chat right now, but can someone drop that in the chat for me, please? And let's see, how are we on time? If you feel moved to do so, please look at that website and see where you're at, put it in the chat, and start engaging with each other and keep the chat live throughout the day. Yeah. Awesome. Just checking time. Do we have Kelly Evans in the room right now? Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you. I'm going to keep rolling then. So moving forward, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker and fearless leader, Kelly Evans. Kelly works with Soundview Strategies, a public affairs firm located in Seattle. They specialize in strategic communications and government relations. She has also led the work of the College Promise Coalition since 2008, which strives to progress and maintain post-secondary education attainability for Washington State. with a goal of 70% of Washingtonians having a post-secondary degree or certification by 2030. The College Promise Coalition creates WASEN's annual priorities, and Kelly has worked closely with WASEN for the past 6 years. She's also a UW alumni. So please join me in welcoming Kelly to the floor.
Thanks, Kayla. Thanks, Becca. Thanks, everybody. Hi, nice to be here with you all. I think I'm filling in for Bish Paul from the Gates Foundation, who is not feeling well today. I'm sure most of you know there's been something going around and he got it. First, I just want to say not just thanks for being here today, but thanks for all the work that you're doing in this space. It's really important, particularly this year, to raise our voices in support of students and their families, of our great colleges and universities around the state, and for opportunity for everyone to pursue whatever pathway they want after high school. I'm going to talk a little bit, Kayla, part of this is you're prepping for Olympia days, correct? So is everybody here coming to Olympia this week? Great. All right. Well, I will see you there because I will be there. And one thing I wanted to acknowledge when I'm talking here, because he can jump in, I'm happy to be interrupted, is Bill Line is here, who is one of my partners in the work that we do for College Promise Coalition, has been since the beginning. So let me give you a little bit of history, and then I want to talk about legislative session, if that's okay, Kayla. Great. College Promise Coalition has been around since about 2009. We were created during the Great Recession when there were deep cuts being made to programs and services across the state, but particularly to higher education. And a number of our higher education leaders kind of got together and said, what can we do to try to stop these cuts that are happening, that are affecting students and families? Folks, if you don't know, the public support for our public universities was cut in about half during the Great Recession, and much of the cost was shifted onto students and families in the form of higher tuition. It was not a great time. And because we were in a recession, there was more demand for programs. There were people who were losing their jobs and needed to get job retraining, pursue different career pathways. So there was demand and increased cost, which was very unfortunate. And we want to prevent that from ever happening again. So when we came together in 2009, our first sort of focus was on stopping the cuts that were happening, bringing together all of the higher education stakeholders and people who cared. So we built this coalition, which is represented by the business community broadly. Obviously, they care deeply about having a skilled workforce. Labor unions that represent faculty and staff at our institutions around the state, are the colleges and universities around the state, both the 2-year and the 4-year public and not-for-profit private institutions. Students and alumni associations, parents groups, community organizations all kind of came together. So we are a pretty broad-based coalition. We've continued to build it over the years. And after we focused on stopping the cuts to higher education in the state budget, we focused on clawing those cuts, the cuts back, and getting back to where we were pre-recession. Managed to secure a dedicated revenue stream in the form of the Workforce Education Investment Act, which is a tax on certain businesses in the state. The money is dedicated to post-secondary programs. We were very proud that we did that in 2019. And have continued to try to expand pathways for students. So whether it's securing more funding for high demand degree slots at institutions around the state, whether it's making sure that students in high school have dual credit opportunities, whether that's AP or college in the high school, those have been priorities for us. This year, I'm sort of sad to say that we are kind of in a place where we are probably not going to be able to make many huge advancements because the state is facing a significant budget challenge. We're not in a recession, as folks know, but our state has a deficit, depending on who you ask. It's somewhere between 6 and 12 or more, even more, $billion over the next 4 years. And it's due to a couple different factors. The state forecasted some things poorly. There's some programs that are meant to ramp up, particularly in the childcare space, where eligibility and subsidies are due to expand in the next few years, which has a significant cost to it. And the state took some one-time money during the COVID times, money that flowed from the federal government, and spent it on things that weren't one time, that needed to be sustained. So they had what they, in budget speak, they call that a bow wave, where there's a cost moving forward. So all those kind of things combined have led to a significant budget shortfall. And so we're going to find ourselves in the place of playing a little defense. This year, and your voices are going to be really important. One of the things that, there's professional lobbyists down in Olympia all day, every day, that walk around on the marble and meet with legislators and grab them in the hallways. All of our institutions have professional lobbyists. They do a great job. Who's not down there every day is students. Because you're living your lives and you're going to school, and you're busy. And so when you take the time to go to Olympia and raise your voices, legislators really do pay attention. If you testify in a committee, often legislators will be on their laptops while people are testifying. When students speak, they stop, and they actually listen, and they pay more attention in meetings, and they pay attention to the emails and things that you send. So the work that you all are doing is really important, particularly this year, because I think it's going to be important to put faces on programs. And the faces on programs for higher education are you. They're the students, the people who have hopes and dreams and are working hard to pursue pathways. And so making sure that legislators know that maintaining the investments and the progress, we have made significant progress. Enrollment is up. The utilization of the Washington College Grant is up, which means that more students from lower income backgrounds are pursuing pathways, which is great and important, and a goal that we all want. And the surest way to stop that progress is for them to make cuts in the budget. So you're just telling your stories to legislators, putting faces on the programs and your institutions. It is really, really important work, and we are really glad that you're joining us in Olympia this week. We're going to have over 100 people who are going to be taking meetings with legislators, and they're broadly representing our coalition. It's the first time we've had this big of a group down. So if things are a little chaotic, give us a little bit of grace. We will get you to your meetings, and we will make sure that you have all the materials and everything that you need. But we're pretty excited. Hopefully the rain holds off and it's a great day on campus. So Kayla, anything else you wanted me to cover? Rebecca?
I think that was great. We've got 2 minutes for questions or comments, if anyone.
Or Bill,
has any.
anything you want to add?
I think you covered it all. I think I'm supposed to do something here in a few minutes.
Okay. Great.
But I don't want to jump Kayla's schedule here.
Totally.
Yeah. Yes. Some time before you start speaking. Yeah, we could totally go on to rest of the programming. Becca's going to take it from here with group norms.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Kayla has mentioned, I am the student advisor for WASN, one of the student advisors for WASN. I'm expressing my gratitude for your participation in Olympia Days. It is an honor to gather as a community dedicated to creating meaningful change, fostering equity, diversity, and inclusion, and advocating for policies supporting and uplifting students across Washington. As we engage, I want to review the group norms for our time together. Our primary goal is to create spaces where every voice can be heard together without fear and every participant feels respected and valued. To maintain this environment, hate speech, slander, or any offensive statements will not be tolerated. Anyone engaging in such behavior should be reported to the advisors and moderators and will be banned from all WASN events. If you see or hear something going against these values, please say something. Our moderation efforts are robust, but we need your help to ensure everyone feels safe. Let's remember why we're here: to build community, support each other, and engage in transformative work. Let's be mindful of the work we do can be challenging. It's okay to seek help when needed. For those who may feel overwhelmed or need additional support in light of current events, we have resources available under helpful links on our front page. I also want to clarify an important distinction as you participate in WASN events: the difference between lobbying and advocacy. Advocacy involves educating policymakers about issues affecting students, sharing personal stories, and providing context to inform decision. Lobbying directly urges policymakers to make a specific stance on a bill or a piece of legislation. As a nonpartisan organization, WASN focuses on advocacy, empowering you to raise awareness and build relationships without endorsing specific legislation. With this, I am excited to pass the torch to your South Sound Regional Coordinator, Jordan, who will guide us through WASN 101. Jordan will provide insights on how we can further our mission and deepen our impact as student advocates. Thank you for your dedication, passion, and commitment to this important work. Let's continue to support one another and make a difference together.
Thank you, Becca, and welcome everyone to our workshop. It's great to see you this afternoon. I'll reintroduce myself quickly. My name is Jordan Verkaskal, and I am a senior at the University of Puget Sound and your South Sound Regional Coordinator. I'd like to start off with our mission statement. We strive to empower student voices and give them opportunities to speak to legislators so we can increase equity and advance educational attainment by sharing our stories. We are the student arm of the College Promise Coalition and work in conjunction with many other groups to support higher education and work with legislators. Next slide. And next slide again. Because sharing our stories is what we do, everyone matters. Each voice is another experience that we can share with legislators and hopefully improve higher education. So I'm really glad to see you all here today because that's a whole bunch of voices that we can share. Next slide. So why WASN? Well, supporting higher education is important. There's a high demand for skilled students to fill jobs, and that provides more opportunities for everyone. Adding on to that, we advocate for educational attainment, which means not just access to higher ed, but higher ed providing the education students desire. We want to prioritize students that have been historically underrepresented and then continue that support into and through college so those students can get the education they desire. Before I continue, I do have a poll I want to have everyone do. Becca touched on this a little bit before in the group norms, but I do want to make sure that everybody knows the difference between advocacy and lobbying, and it's a great test to see if you understand what Becca said. All right, great. So I see almost everyone answered yes to that, so that's fantastic. On the next slide here, I do have some definitions for advocacy and lobbying as well. So hopefully, if you're still a little wondering, that should clear things up. The important thing to keep in mind is that advocacy is showing support for a cause as opposed to support of a specific idea, whereas lobbying is support of a specific idea in an attempt to directly influence the decisions around it. So to put that into simpler terms when we're talking to legislators, it's great to support a cause like higher education needs more funding. We should be providing more scholarships and financial aids to students, but we don't want to be talking about and supporting specific bills that are on the table right now. Next slide. Lastly, I want to look at our priorities once more. Our main priority is just to protect the progress we've made so far. But from there, we also want to raise awareness for financial aid, increase dual credit opportunities, and support students through their higher education journey so they get the education they need. Okay, so how can you get involved? Well, of course, one way is by being here and going to Olympia Days. So thank you everyone for being here. You're really making a big difference. You can also reach out to your regional coordinator. We have me, as well as Cassandra and Richie, and then of course Becca and Kayla. So feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. You can also reach out to your liaisons. I know we have a few of those in the chat right now. So if you are a campus liaison, please feel free to introduce yourself and you should be able to talk to those people as well. And you can even apply to be a liaison yourself. We're full for the South Sound region right now, but I'm sure some of the other regions might still have spots open. You can also invite us to come to your school and talk, do a presentation, or table at an event. And of course, feel free to check out our Instagram at WashingtonSun1 if you want to learn more. I'll hand it off to Richie now for our guest speakers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richie Martin. I'm the Columbia Regional Coordinator. It's my privilege today to introduce Bill Line, Professor of English at Western Washington University, where he specializes in American and African American literature. As an accomplished scholar, he has edited Walking the Talk, an anthology of African American studies, and published extensively in respected journals such as PMLA, Arizona Quarterly, African American Review, and Science and Society. His teaching portfolio includes courses in American literature, African American literature, and cultural studies, reflecting his dedication to fostering critical engagement with literature and culture. Beyond academia, Dr. Line is the president of the United Faculty of Washington State, an organization advocating for the faculty at Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, Western Washington University, and the Evergreen State College. In this role, he is committed to strengthening public higher education across the state.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Richie, for that wonderful introduction.
You're welcome.
So I think I'm here to talk about just how things go in the meetings that you're going to have with legislators. I can't see everybody, but is this going to be everybody's first time? I mean, do we have a mix of people who have done this before and people who are doing it for the first time? Is that fair, Kayla? Okay. So let me start by saying that, look, legislators are just regular people. They do have a lot of power. They do control a lot of what happens to us. But there's somebody who got excited about something and decided to run and were elected by 100 votes or something in the district that they live in. So there's no need to be afraid of them as somehow highly exalted people or people that you should be afraid of being in the presence of. I also want to reemphasize what Kelly said before. Student voices do make a big difference in Olympia. They see people like me all the time. They see y'all very rarely. They know everything that I'm going to say. What you're saying to them is something new and perhaps interesting for them. So don't underestimate the real power that y'all are bringing to what we're doing here this week, and inhabit that power. Walk with some confidence that y'all belong here, and that your voices are really, really important. In terms of what actually happens in these meetings, you get 15-minute slots. You go there and you meet for 15 minutes. The first 5 minutes are taken up with introductions. And if y'all are coming to our day on Thursday, it's Thursday, right? Not Wednesday? Yes, Thursday.
Yes.
If you're coming on Thursday, you will be with a lot of other folks that will be part of your group. The first 5 minutes of what you do there will probably be taken up with introductions, and you'll be crowding into small offices and things like that. The middle 5 minutes are when you get to make your point. The last 5 minutes are the legislator griping about whatever's on their mind. So it's those middle 5 minutes that you really have to be on your game during that. You need to really make your point and make it in a way. I mean, the stories that you guys tell are the things that stick with the legislators through the rest of the day. Okay, remember they have back to back meetings, and they're going to have come from a meeting from someone wanting to talk about transportation, and be going from your meeting to someone who wants to gripe at them about taxes or something like that. So they're coming out of a completely different place and going into a completely different place, and you're the transition between those two things, and you need to make your message stick in that 5 minutes. So get it down that you can do the 30-second version, the 2-minute version, the 3-minute version of the story you want to tell, and be ready to adapt depending on, how much time they're wasting, or what, if they were late showing up or something like that. Be ready to condense or expand at the drop of a hat and on the fly there. Recognize also that while y'all are extremely important voices, and again, voices that the legislators take as seriously as anybody else, there will also be sometimes a tendency to be a little bit condescending and a little bit head patting. Don't engage with that. Don't get upset by that. It's just old people talking down to young people, and let that go. What's important is to stay focused on the message that you have, and no matter how much someone tries to distract you from that, to respond careful, to keep coming back to make the impression that is the one that you want to make. The overwhelming majority of legislators are very, very nice, very respectful, very polite people. Occasionally, you will get ones who aren't nice, who aren't respectful, and aren't polite. Again, just ignore that. Do not in any way take it personally. That's on them, not on you. If someone starts giving you a hard time about something, or if someone is sort of snotty in their responses, let that go. Again, what you're there to do is to deliver the message. If they don't want to hear it, that's their problem. And if they do want to try to turn it back in some nasty sort of way, let that go. Don't even worry about that. This year, as Kelly pointed out, everybody is talking about the budget deficit. This will be a specific way of coming at this legislative session, that everybody's going to be wanting to talk about budgets and what to do about budgets. And a classic question that you will get from legislators is, okay, that's great, but I've got 1,000 other things that are just as important that people want to get funded, how would you prioritize this? Or where will you get the money for the things that you want to do? Okay. Those are the kinds of questions you're likely to get. They're unanswerable. The real answer is, I don't know. That's why you ran for office. That's what you were elected to do. That's your problem. That's not the answer you want to give them, but that is the real answer. But again, I would just come back to deflect away from those questions and get back to, look, this is important for Washington students. This is important for Washington colleges and universities. This is important for the Washington economy going forward. You want to continually keep coming back to your message, so that when you leave, they will remember both the tone of your voice and what it is you actually said. Other than that, I mean, look, don't get distracted. Have your pitch down to ways that you can contract and expand on in a heartbeat. Do not take anything personally that happens. If anything goes sideways, and probably it won't, but if it does, don't worry about that. Let that go. It's not your problem, it's theirs. And have fun. I mean, this is a great opportunity. It is what democracy is supposed to be. I mean, we're at the state level. Again, you're talking to people who generally have day jobs, who don't get paid enough in the job as legislator to have this be their only job. They're coming from all different walks of life. They're regular people. Not everything is fully cooked at the state level already in the way that it is at the national level. You really do have an opportunity to make a real impact here in the hours that you're going to spend in Olympia next week. Enjoy that, live it up, and really soak it in and have as much of a good time as you possibly can. I'm happy to answer any questions or engage in any kind of discussion with that, but that's I think the basic outline of the way to come at this when you're in legislators' offices.
I've also dropped our flashcards into the chat with key messaging and priorities. Everyone will get copies of that to have in hand when we're at the Capitol, but so you can take a look at those right now. They're in the chat.
Is there anything anybody's concerned about or worried about or doesn't understand? I mean, we'll all be there all day. We'll be helping with people on where to go, how to get to offices, things like that. We're hoping to be able to provide as much support as we can. Going around, you'll get to meet lots of faculty and regents and trustees and other kinds of advocates for higher ed, so that will be good.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say how much I appreciate you talking about being ready to expand or contract your story. I have been to Olympia before, but I got so set in my story. I had never been told that advice. And even though I'd been before, that was very valuable advice to have because they do change. And there was moments where we had to walk with the legislator to their office and we're kind of talking to them on the fly. And it was very in the moment. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. And again, don't get flummoxed by that. I mean, it's fun. It's as long as you're secure in what you believe and what you have to say, it's like talking to the people in your dorm or something. You can if you come to treat it that way, you can expand or contract those, I think, pretty easily. I mean, you've all lived this. These stories are yours. You're the best ones to tell them. Just don't forget that.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, so for the 30th, my headphones kind of cut me off. But said for the 30th, what's going on for the 30th?
It's the question, what's going to happen on the 30th?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to have a meeting early in the morning out on the it's out on the one of the diagonals. Yeah, Kelly, you could maybe jump in a little bit on this too.
Yeah, we have a meeting location on one of the lawns very near the Capitol Dome. They're called the diagonals because they're like diagonals. We have a tent. Everyone is meeting there, and so we're going to do a briefing, and everyone will be given their packets and assigned their groups. And so you will gather with your groups, and you will have the list of your meetings, and you will go off to your meetings. They're spread out through the day. We have a pretty big group. I think we have 100 and some people coming. We have meetings with over 50 legislators. So everyone is going to 3, maybe 4 meetings. And we have a time for lunch. But we'll go over everything that morning and answer questions that people have. And we'll be in the tent all day if people have any issues.
We got cool scarves too.
We've got cool scarves. We're providing lunch for everyone. We know if some people can't stay the whole day, I think the latest meeting is at 4 o'clock. So no one is going to be there later than 4:30.
And Kayla, y'all are doing your day on Wednesday, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And
So
you have
to
meetings
clarify
scheduled
for
for that day?
everyone, yeah. So our Olympia Days is the 29th, this coming Wednesday. That's just for South Sound, right? That the bus is taking out to Olympia. And if you're with us, especially on the bus, then you can, the reception will be happening that night, but then CPC's advocacy days will be the next day on Thursday. That's anyone, if you're able to make it out, RSVP. I put the link in the chat.
Sorry for
On
confusion.
Wednesday, you'll get to go with students, and on Thursday, you'll get to go with old people like me.
Yeah.
Faculty and staff and regents, and there's a lot of regents and trustees. So the boards of the universities and colleges around the state. There's a lot of those folks that are coming.
Sheila, did you have a question before I saw your hand up?
No, Kayla just took care of it. I was just hoping to clarify because I'm seeing some questions in the chat about
Yeah.
transportation and
Yeah,
all of that.
sorry.
So thank you
All
for
right. Sorry for
bringing
adding
that
more
out. Nope.
confusion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's probably my fault.
You guys,
I think it's my fault.
I've
I
been
think it's
getting
my fault.
questions from all over the place about this because the two days are back to back. So it is confusing, but yes, there are two separate events that are happening next week.
And just to jump in real quick, for my region, the Columbia region, we'll be going on Sunday, February 2nd, and having our legislative appointments on February 3rd, that Monday.
That's great. That's great.
And while we're at it, North and King will be February 16th and 17th. But we'll give more details of that when we get into breakout rooms and we've got schedules and yeah, all the good stuff for you.
Kayla, we have extra scarves too if you want to get them before your meetings on Wednesday and wear them Wednesday. Everyone will be wearing them Thursday too.
We also have scarves.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
What color are your scarves?
They are white this year, mostly white with some details. They coordinate with our socks that we got this year. Yeah, I've got them in my garage right now. I can go grab them.
Is there anything else we can answer for you?
Can you, with the new changes to the state after this election, is there, should we still keep our message the same? How should I put this? Because the budget's changed, right? And it's tighter. We still have these needs and these issues, right? I guess it's, how should we prepare for that, I guess?
Like I say, I would keep your message absolutely the same. A lot's gonna, I mean, as Kelly pointed out, depending on who you talk to right now, the gap is either, 6 billion to 12 billion, so they can't even agree on what that is. There's going to be lots and lots of talk about taxes and revenue and that's going to be very emotionally engaged talk as the weeks go by. Some things are going to get paid, some things are going to get cut. Our job here is to push our stuff to the top of the list. And again, I would try to avoid as much as possible getting engaged with legislators who want to talk to you about how to solve their budget problems. We're advocates, we're not legislators. We're there to tell them what the students of the state of Washington need. Their job is to find ways to provide those things that those students need.
Yep.
Keep coming back to those messages.
Yeah. You can literally say to them, we know that your job is really hard this year.
Right.
We're just here to talk to you about why the investments that you've been making in students and our futures is so important. Just pivot there. You could, but because their job is hard this year. It is.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thanks.
But don't start negotiating with yourselves. I mean,
No.
don't let anything, don't say, oh, well, we'll never get that, so we don't want to talk about it. I mean, it's their job to figure that out. Our job is to make a long list of things that we need from them.
Yep.
I think another important point too is when legislators ask you about the bills, or what bill does this support, deviate and say, well, we're not here to talk about the bills. We're just here to give our stories.
Yeah, I mean, that's the advocacy lobbying difference. Support higher ed, give money to higher ed is all fine. Vote yes on HB 2158. Don't say stuff like that. Is there anything else we can answer for anybody?
I guess I do have a question. In your guys's day on the 30th or 31st, I don't quite remember. Is this going to be more geared toward lobbying, or are you also advocating in your agenda?
We're advocates.
Yeah, we're advocates, but there may be people in the meetings because it is kind of a diverse group of folks that are going in. There may be people who don't have the advocacy versus lobbying restrictions. So like you may be in a group with someone who's like it starts talking about a bill number. It's fine, they can do that. It doesn't impact you. Your
Yeah.
message should be the same.
Okay, so I guess here's because this event, like if I went, I'm not going representing Wasson, right? If I registered for this, I would be representing myself. So in that case, am I able to speak on those issues? Or so I'm not going, by the way, but this may come up for some other students who maybe aren't asking, so it's for them as well.
Kayla or Becca, do you want to answer that?
I missed it. I'm in the chat.
Oh,
Well,
What was
I
the
mean,
question?
I think the basic answer is that if you're there on the Wasson dime, you gotta make sure you respect the advocacy lobbying distinction there.
And so if you go up through them, I think it is by yourself. You would be going and helping represent CPC.
right.
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah. CPC is going to train people. We have the same restrictions as everyone else, right? So we're going to train people that mostly we want them to talk about big picture, the importance of higher education, et cetera. But we also don't control every single person what they're going to say in a meeting when there's 6 or 7 people in a meeting, right? And so I'm not going to sweat that. Like I'm not paying people to be there or whatever. So, I would hope that most people would stay on message, but I also have expectation that some people will deviate.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I just, in case someone else goes, on their own, register for this, that
Yeah.
they know that it's in the spirit of I'm sorry, in advocacy work.
Yeah.
And yes, okay.
And in the spirit of our coalition, which we will share with you, our friend, the messaging, which is not really all that different than the messaging that you all use either. So you're going to be very familiar with it. So, we would ask people to honor that.
I will add, there is a question in the chat from Evan.
Right.
If they really ask how we would do their job. I've had a legislator before in a WASED meeting basically ask that, like, how would you do that? How do you see moving funding around to then do that? And the advice that I got from WASEN would be that you can respond and, well, that's your job. But I did have ideas and I let him know kind of like my knowledge of where funding was going and where I could see things moving around. And then it just started like a open conversation about how it all works. Like, try not to get intimidated or offended if they ask that, I think, but just keep it, you're talking to another person and your opinions are valid.
And it can come in a nice form or a bad form. You get the ones who say, "Oh, it's so hard. There's so many important things. What would you cut instead of, so I mean, versus the ones who say, "Well, I've got 6 children lined up here. Which one do you want me to kill?" Something like that. I mean, I think, yeah, if you have some ideas about which one you want them to kill, maybe let them know. But again, you want to come back to your message. And you got to walk out of there with them remembering your message as the the bus drivers are coming in after you or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like the most likely thing that a lot of them are going to say is either, if you want this funding, what would you cut? And they will say that. A lot of them will say that, and or what tax are you going to support? And I just like, my advice to you is don't go down those roads, right? I just say, we know that you have a really hard job. We're just here to remind you how important the investments that you've been making are for students and families, for their futures, for our economy of our state, for the businesses that need to hire people. Like, I would just stick with that. It's just, you can go down a big rabbit hole.
Yeah.
be as respectful as possible. And another question in the chat is if they were to get aggressive in one of your meetings, one, we will have forms day of that we are asking you to tell us how your meeting went with each legislator. So please, if you have a bad meeting, come to us, let us know, and like write it down for us so that we have documentation of it. But yeah, typically that's not very common.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that's really kind of unlikely. I mean, the overwhelming majority of legislators are very nice people, and it's occasionally happens that one of them gets snarky, but
yeah, the more likely thing is they're patronizing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of how. I mean, they have norms and guidelines and things that they have to follow as well. So.
And it's quite likely that if you're in the meetings that we're scheduling for Thursday, that someone in your group will be a constituent of that person, that legislators in that legislator's district, which always leads them to behave a little better too.
Or a personal relationship.
Yeah.
Also, I did want to make note of this at some point today, at least for Wednesday or at least a lot of the Wasen's Olympia days, there will be meetings with staff. And I think, go into it with a good mindset and, pick their brains because they work very closely with these legislators and, yeah, try and still gain, grow from the experience, learn from the experience, share your stories, and yeah.
And there is an opportunity. I mean, when you do get meetings that are just with staff, a lot of those staff were you 3 years ago, and have actually come through, groups like WASN or been legislative aides or something like that. Legislative liaisons from the institutions and things like that. So when you have those meetings with staff, it's quite likely that you will get someone who's inclined to be fairly empathetic toward what you're saying already. So I think Kayla's absolutely right. Don't think that they're wasting your time if you're just meeting with staff.
Any other questions? I think we're on schedule, guys. Look at us.
I'm seeing a lot of in the chat is how they access your jobs. I'm seeing a lot of if let take photos. I'm seeing a lot of Columbia region for campus people for jobs. I don't know. I've seen those already.
Were you checking if there's opportunities for campus liaison in Columbia region, Kathleen?
Yeah. Is that better?
Yes, and yes, there are definitely opportunities for campus liaison. And in the chat is a link that explains the position. And I'll put my email in the chat and you can email me directly so I can speak with you through email, or we can even set up a time and talk about it as well over Zoom.
Thanks for keeping an eye on the chat, Kathleen. I think I heard you talk about the photos. Yes, and we will have a shared drive that people will be able to, we hope that you'll upload photos and share with everyone. And yeah, it'll be a collective effort trying to get pictures taken at all the events. And yes, lunches will be provided, box lunches. Day of every event, we are keeping 12 to 12:30 open for lunch. But some people will need to grab lunch and then run to the meetings, but we'll talk more about that later. And to keep us rolling and on schedule so we don't keep you for too long, thank you, Bill and Kelly, for the great information. And I think Richie's got a game for us to play.
Prizes.
Okay, so hi everyone. We are going to split into breakout rooms on it's essentially one will be South Sound region, one would be the Eastern and Columbia region, one will be the North and King region. Those will encompass the days that you are going out to Olympia, and so they will be each regional coordinator in there will go over the information and the waiver that you need to go to Olympia.
Am I ready to go? Okay. It's my honor to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Martinez, a passionate educator and advocate for open, honest dialogue about issues that shape our world. Dr. Martinez was raised in a large Mexican-American family. He has always been fascinated by the ways people interact, relate, and exchange ideas. This is a lifelong curiosity that drives his work as a teacher, where he fosters meaningful classroom discussions on topics like race, immigration, inequality, mental health, and substance abuse. Conversations he believes are essential for societal progress. He currently teaches Survey of Hispanic Cultures, Chicano History, Race and Ethnicity, and American Diversity at Columbia Basin College. He is also serves as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI. He's a proud father of 2 daughters, ages 13 and 6, and he takes great joy in sharing his knowledge about the world with them. So please join me in welcoming my former professor of American Diversity, Dr. Eudelio Martinez.
Well, I gotta thank you first and foremost, Rich, for the introduction, man. Right? But you took my win. I was supposed to start with a personal like all my energy or all my information. So I guess I'll just speak a little bit to that. I do have to correct some things first and foremost, and that is first and foremost, I'm not the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do, however, teach diversity, equity, inclusion at Columbia Basin College, right? So I just wanna be honest with that. And my kids aren't 13 and 6 no more. They are actually 18 and 11 now, right? And they are a constant reminder that and my wrinkles on my face that time has passed and then that I don't have forever to accomplish the dreams that I have, right? And I think I do share that and I purposely share that because the students that I have are often younger. And I think as a young man, I personally I took my life for granted. I took my youth for granted. I put myself in a lot of dangerous positions, if I'm really honest. And I regret those things. And I share those stories to not only with my kids, but with my students or anybody that will listen because I tell my students, blink your eyes and you'll be 44 like me. Honestly, I blink your eyes and you'll be 44 like me. You do not have forever. That's the truth, right? And the moment is now. The moment is always now. And so I'll start with that. In terms of my little self-introduction will be where I work and what I do, but Rich kind of covered it, right? So I'll give you a little bit more context. And I'll start with this. I'm actually, well, obviously from my background, I'm sitting in a car, right? And I'm sitting in a car in Othello, Washington. If anybody is familiar with the East Side, Othello is a town located between Pasco, Washington, and Moses Lake is what I would say. And I share that because it's real close to my hometown, right? Othello is about 12 miles outside of Warden, and Warden is the town where I grew up in. And Warden is, I think Rich is I know Rich knows Warden, but I don't think a lot of other people do. Quite frankly, you wouldn't, because it is it's a dot, quite frankly, right? When I tell people where I'm from, I share, I tell them that we have no stoplights in Warden. We have one blinking yellow. Literally, that's where I came from. One blinking yellow light at the end of Main Street, which is the same road that I grew up on, right? And that's the town that I grew up in. And it was a beautiful little childhood that I lived. But it also came with not necessarily barriers, but simply that I didn't know what the world was, right? All I saw was what was in Warden, and it was small, right? And it was a farming community, and I did not know everything that the world possessed. And I think for that reason, as a young man, my dreams were very limited. I simply did not know what was possible out there. And I had to get out there, and see it for myself and fall on my face a lot of times. And so I'll share that. I do, in fact, work at Columbia Basin College now. But that is, I don't know, that's where I'm at now. It's been a long journey though. And so I guess I'll make that transition now. I mean, actually what I'll do is I'll start my timer, because Rich said I got about 15 to 20 minutes. And so, what am I trying to say? I'm going to start with my academic journey. So I was born in Moses Lake, raised in Warden, and I never took high school seriously. My academic journey honestly did not start until I was about 19 years old, and there's a little story that I'll get to try to relate that. But what I tell my students is I do not recall studying for one test in all of high school. Honestly, not one test. I did not take high school seriously. I went to high school to kick it with my friends, to try to talk to girls, which I never really did, right? And to play sports, and that's where my mind was. That's where my focus was, and everything outside of that was non-existent, quite frankly. Those were my priorities at that time. I got really into sports, particularly wrestling, right? I'm actually outside of Othello Gym because my daughter's wrestling in a wrestling tournament, right? And so it's kind of a little come to, full circle for me, right? But I got really into sports, and what I tell my kids is I took sports very seriously, and I took them seriously because they were the only thing that gave me confidence. I didn't think I was intelligent. I didn't think I was handsome. I didn't think I was charismatic. The only thing that gave me any kind of confidence was sports. And so I threw everything into them. When I would lose in wrestling, I would cry, right? It was like I lost everything, because that's the only the only thing that gave me confidence, right? And the truth was that I wasn't stupid, that I'm not ugly, right? And that I had other things going for me, but I just didn't realize it at that time, because to relate it back to Warden, because my focus was so limited, my experiences were so limited. It's the only thing that I saw, right? And it took, if I'm really honest, it took almost dying for me to realize that wasn't the case. And so I'm going to try to go forward. I will get to my academic journey, but Rich told me that to try to focus on some impact points, or I listen to a podcast called the Pivot podcast. And so I like the concept of pivot points, things that happen in your life that really change the trajectory of your life. And when I was thinking about that concept, pivot points or impact points, I came back to an experience I had at 19 years old, right? And so I'll try to tell the story very quickly, because I know I don't have a lot of time, but I hit a semi on Highway 17 at 19. I was drunk. In fact, I was so drunk that I passed out in my car. It was about 2 a.m. I'd been to a Kager. I was driving home, and I passed out at the wheel. I crossed the center line. Luckily, the semi saw me crossing the center line, got the front part of the semi out of the way, and I collided into the trailer. I hit the trailer, spun this way, and I was on the side of Highway 17. And the truth is, well, I'll tell you this first and foremost, I broke half my body, right? There's little pieces of my car that are still stuck in my body. You see little black marks under my eyelids. These are pieces of my car that are still stuck under my skin. And you would think that an experience like that would shock somebody out of the stupidity in which I was living. But if I'm really honest, it didn't. In fact, I remember, I have this vivid memory of waking up in a hospital in Wenatchee 2 days later. And I had a bunch of friends come visit me. And I remember my mom or somebody wheeled me out into the little visiting room, and I was in front of all my friends. And I was so stupid that the first thing that came out of my mouth was, that was a crazy party. I swear to God, that's what I said. That was a crazy party. That was the first word that came out of my mouth after I had nearly died. And so this is what happened. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. I broke my shoulder. I broke my femur in 3 spots. Like I said, my face was just jacked up, right? My whole left side of my body was just destroyed. But my father is I come from a Mexican American family. My mother graduated high school. My father he dropped out in the 6th grade. Grew up as a migrant farm worker. He was never a man who was really, I don't know, for those who come from Mexican American home. My dad was not a talker. He was a stoic man, right? You know, you couldn't get anything out of the dude, right? You know, he went to work, he came home, he watched some TV, but conversation was just not his it was not his thing, right? You know. But he was a wise man, and I think he realized that his child did not understand how close to death he had come. And so the day that I was released from the hospital, I don't know why, but my father took me home. My mom wasn't there. I'm a mama's boy. I never really had a real good relationship with my dad. He was always gone, quite frankly. He was always working, so I never really knew him, if I'm really honest, you know? And so I grew up with my mom, and I was attached to her hip when I was a child, and we had a connection. But for whatever reason, my father took me home, and I recall being in the car, right? You know, and he's taking me home, and we get into Moses, but he doesn't go to our house. We don't live in Moses. We lived in Warden, but he didn't go home, and I didn't ask him. I think I was in the back seat, right? And I'm sitting there, and where he took me to the junkyard where my car was. That's where he took me, and I remember he parked right in. I don't know how my dad got in the junkyard. You know, I don't know, but he parks right in front of the car that I wrecked in. And I looked up and I saw the car, and I broke. I broke completely. Like I remember I was convulsing so much. Right? I don't know. I was crying, like doing this. I was moving my body, right? You know, and I was just, and I think what made me break was just, it was the realization of how close to death I had been, right? Literally, right? You know, and this man who spoke very few words to me in my life, he recognized that this stupid little kid doesn't realize how close to death he was. And he had the wisdom to take me in front of that car, to show me that car, and he just let me break. He didn't touch me. He didn't say a word to me. He didn't do nothing. He just let me break, and I broke. I don't know how long we sat there, but I broke. And it finally dawned on me that I should have died. I had no business getting out of that car. If you could see that car, y'all, right? I had a Dodge Neon. I don't know if anybody's seen a Dodge Neon, but it's not a big car, right? And I hit a semi, and literally the half of my car, it was gone. Like it was gone until the back of my of the front seat. There was no car left. And I sat there and I'm like, I don't know how I survived. I don't know how I got out of that car alive, right? You know? And that was the pivot point of my life. If sadly, I wish I could tell you that I never drank again, that I never put my life at risk again. But the truth is, I can't say that, right? You know, I made mistakes after that, but that moment changed me fundamentally. It changed me fundamentally, right? You know, first and foremost, right? It took sports away, right? I had just signed, or about 2 months prior, I had signed a scholarship. I was going to go to Highline Community College on the west side to wrestle. You know, that was always my dream, to wrestle at the next level, right? You know, I'm from Warden, Washington, which is a tiny town, and I always had this, I still do, I have a chip on my shoulder, right? You know, first, you can't see my height, but I'm 5'7", 150 right now at 44 years old. So back in high school, right, you know, I was about 5'6", 120, 30 pounds, right? You know, so I always had this chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove myself to anyone and everyone. I'm honest, I'm still like that. But I had signed that scholarship, you know, and it was my dream to compete at the next level. And I had the opportunity. And 2 weeks before I was scheduled to leave the Highline Community College, I got in that wreck, you know. And so I remember the first time that I opened my eyes at the hospital, I asked my mom. Actually, my eyes weren't even open. I was just conscious. I remember my eyes were still cold or still closed. And I asked my mom, because she was sitting by the bed, and I asked mom, right, you know, because I used to play softball too. I come from a family of, we played baseball like crazy, right, you know. And I asked my mom, can I play softball? Because we had like this tournament, right, you know. And she told me no, right, you know. And then dude, it still makes me cry. But then I asked her, can I wrestle? And she said no. And I broke for the first time. I broke, right? You know, because it was my dream to do that. And I didn't, right? You know, instead I took myself back to Big Bend Community College, which is where I started. And why I say that that was a pivot of my life was I d- it forced me to give up on these athletic dreams that I had nourished and you know and wanted for so long. And I discovered, you know, that I wasn't stupid. I discovered that I like to read, that I like to speak, right? You know, that I like to learn, right? Which I never knew previous to that. And and my dream was taken, but what happened was I discovered another dream, right? I discovered another way to compete. I discovered another goal, so to speak. And that moment, that incident was the turning point of my entire life. And so from there, what happened was I finished community college at Big Bend. I transferred to Eastern Washington University. At first, I did not know what I wanted to do with my life, right? I ended up getting into a program called the McNair Scholars Program, which is like a trio program. And McNair's purpose is to try to increase minority and underrepresented PhDs, right? You know, so you could be an ethnic minority, or your parents maybe or first gen. Those were like the two major qualifications to enter McNair. And I met all those, quite frankly, right? You know, and so I ended up getting to McNair. And when I got into the McNair Scholars Program for the first time in my life, I met a group of people who thought education and intelligence was cool. Like, for the first time in my life, I met a group of people that I liked and that I thought were cool, and but they were into academics, you know. In Wharton, I never met that group. That group did not exist, right? You know, it was not cool to be smart in Wharton, right? You wanted to be the class clown, you want to be the jock, right? You want to be the person who, I don't know, right? You know, who was disruptive in class. That's what got you attention in Wharton, right? Especially for a Mexican American kid like myself, right? You know, I didn't want to be smart, you know, like, that's the nerd. I ain't trying to be a nerd, right? And at Eastern was the first time I ever met a group of people that I liked, that I admired, and that thought that intelligence and academics were cool, and that changed me too, right? Or it just showed me that this is where I belong, you know, I can do this. And with the help of McNair, I applied to grad school. I ended up doing very well in my application process, got into, like, you know, 4 or 5 different schools, and ended up going to Southern California. I got a PhD at the University of California, Irvine. It was not easy. You know, if I had 2 hours, y'all, I'd tell you more, right? You know, but I got about, 10 more minutes, right? You know, but I ended up going to grad school. It was a struggle.
Don't worry about the time. I'm sorry, don't worry about the time, Professor. It's okay.
All right, right. You know, but it was a struggle, right? You know, I was not, I, well, my life was a bunch of firsts, right? You know, and so I'm this kid from Wharton, Washington, who's a first generation student, whose father has a 6th grade education, whose mom, you know, finished high school, but she was a stay-at-home mom. None of my mom just left, and so she's leaving the tournament, so I wait, right? I just and then I go to UCI. That's what University of California Irvine. It's called UCI, and I'm taking classes with kids who went to Harvard. I had 2 people from the UK who went to freaking Cambridge, right? You know, just these people who were from different places, like, completely, right? And, you know, and they knew what they were getting into. I didn't know what I was getting into, right? Literally, I tell my students that I didn't know what a PhD stood for when I got into grad school. Literally, I didn't know what the letters stood for. For anybody who doesn't, it stands for Doctor of Philosophy, believe it or not, right? But I didn't even know what the initials stood for. I didn't know what I had to do to get out of grad school. I didn't know what was expected of me. I just got in the McNair Scholars Program. They helped me write the application. They helped me apply. I got in and I just went, right? You know? Which is how I've done a lot of things in my life. I don't think things through. I just jump in sometimes, which is not always good, but, you know, it's worked out for the most part so far. And so I'm once again in an ocean, you know, completely, I don't know, unfamiliar for me, right? And so what I did was what we do in life, y'all. We adapt. And so I began the process of adaptation, right? You know, or just trying to catch up, trying to find myself, my voice. And it was not easy. I'll add this little tidbit. I do in fact have 2 children. The oldest of which is 18 years old, and she was actually born after my first quarter of grad school, literally, right? You know, she was born in November 28th, 2006, which was the end, or not even the end of my first quarter in grad school. So you add all this stuff together, right? You know, you add this kid from Warden, right? This Mexican American kid from Warden going to, you know, this very, you know, UCI is kind of a prestigious school, right? You know, it's like I ain't gonna use no words to describe it. You can figure it out for yourself if you'd like to check it out. But it's, you know, it's posh, right? You know, it's what I've learned was bougie, right? You know the word bougie, right? You know, it's a bougie place, right? You know, even Irvine is a bougie town, right? It's very higher economic strata kind of town. And so I'm there trying to adapt, and I'm a first-time father, and I'm adapting, and it was not easy. I struggled a lot, you know, in lots of places in my life, right? You know, and that one too. But I think I don't think I'm not the most intelligent person, right? You know, I'm not the, you know, I don't have all these, you know, these super qualities. I was not, you know, I am who I am, but what I do have, I think, what I've learned that I have is I am hard-headed. I am determined, right? You know, you know, I don't know why. I don't know if it came from my family, or I don't know what came from wrestling, perhaps, but I refuse to give up. It doesn't exist in my mind, honestly, right? I don't think about it, right? You know, yeah, I don't care how tall you are. I don't care how I'll stand up face to face with you, and we'll, and you know, I don't back down. I don't know why that is, right? I think it probably comes from my father, if I'm really honest, right? You know, but that's honestly the quality, you know, that and the support of my family, that it's what got me through grad school, right? You know, and it was a challenging experience. I remember applying for, you know, in grad school, ultimately you have to write a dissertation. Most people, they'll apply for funding, right? You know, from certain funding agencies, whether it's the National Science Foundation, the Winter Grant. There's all these granting, these funding agencies that you have to apply for. And the process of applying for these grants is, you know, we're talking about a 10-page application, single space, right? You know, you have to have a budget, you have to have everything written out, right? So I did that, right? You know, so I took a year just applying to these grants, and I got none of them, right? You know, fail over and over again, right? You know, and I remember thinking, right, you know, like, what am I going to do? Like, literally, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And what I ended up doing for grad school, or it actually came from an idea, right? You know, I don't know if anybody's ever been to a Del Taco. Del Taco is a franchise that kind of exists more in SoCal than it does up here in Washington. There actually is one in Richland, but if I'm honest, I wouldn't recommend it. I went there once and I didn't think the food was very good, right? Not in comparison to Southern California, in my opinion, right? You know, but I used to go to Del Taco because it was about 3 blocks away from my house. You know, my kid's mom wasn't always home, right? You know, so, and I didn't know how to cook. I'm a Mexican American kid. My mom always cooked for me, right? You know, and so I didn't know how to feed this little child, let alone clean her, and right, you know, so I had to learn all these things. And so sometimes we go to Del Taco, right? You know, I get her some tacos, or, you know, whatever. And I remember being at Del Taco one time, you know, because I was always interested for my dissertation. You know, I come from an immigrant background, right? You know, so I wanted to research Mexican immigrants. I want to go to Mexico, right? You know, I wanted to do something in relation to Mexican immigration. And I kept on getting, you know, I wouldn't get the grant. Right? You know, so I was rejected. Rejected and rejected. And I remember one day I'm sitting at Del Taco waiting for my food, right? You know, and I'm sitting there, I got my little number and I'm waiting there. And I'm just sitting there listening to the conversation. And it's all immigrants cooking the food. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, it finally dawned on me in that moment. I was like, I don't need to go to Mexico to study Mexican immigration. I don't. I can do it right here, right? You know? And that day, that same moment, I asked the manager for an application. I filled out the application. I turned it in, right? You know, and 2 hours I got a call. He said, you know, you want to start? And I started work, right? You know, probably about 2 days later, right? I started working at Del Taco. And I wrote my dissertation on fast food and immigration in Orange County, right? You know, and that, you know, I got a lot of pivot points. We all have a lot of pivot points in our life, but working at Del Taco was one of those pivot points, right? You know, it taught me how to make conversation. It taught me, you know, about work ethic, quite frankly, right? You know, and it taught me about what immigrants really have to do in order to get by, right? You know, and so I want to try to stay close to the time. I would just meet these people, right? You know, I remember this woman named Rosa, right? You know, and one time I'm having a conversation with her, right? You know, and Rosa's schedule was literally, she was a single mom of 2 kids, two girls, right? And she told me that she worked at Del Taco from like 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And then she had a paper route in Anaheim, California at midnight till about 4 a.m., right? You know, so that was her schedule. She would go home at 4, She'd pick up her kids from school, right? You know, she'd stay with them until about 10 o'clock. Then she'd go pick up her papers, deliver her papers till 4 in the morning, get home, take her kids to school. They'll talk at 8 o'clock, right? You know, over and over again, right? You know, and so I'm just listening to these stories. I'm like, damn, right? Like, you know, like if you're ever feeling sorry for yourself, y'all, right? You know, I'd highly encourage you, go work some fast food, right? You know, go talk to someone, and those feelings of feeling sorry for they'll vanish like this, right? You know, when you realize what other people actually do, right? You know, and Rosa was just one of many, right? I met this other guy named Felipe. I used to call him Don Felipe, right? You know, and Don Felipe was the same way. He was a grill guy. We were working the grill Del Taco. At night, where'd he work? At a gas station. He worked at a gas station from about 10 to freaking 6 in the morning, right? Get home, and he'd do these double shifts. And that's how these people lived, right? Because I don't know if anybody's ever been to Southern California, but the rents are ridiculous, you know. But nowadays, even in Washington State, the rents are ridiculous. And that's how they live. And I remember just hearing these people, and what it gave me was motivation. But more importantly, if I'm really honest, I couldn't feel sorry for myself. I was like, how are you gonna feel sorry for yourself when I'm hearing these people, and they're gonna have to do this for the rest of their lives, right? And many of these people didn't have papers on top of this, and I'm like, you know, I couldn't feel sorry for myself, and that helped me, right? It helped me to continue to push forward after being rejected and made to feel like I didn't belong, which I won't go into that detail, but I had experiences where, you know, straight up individuals made me feel like I didn't, you know, like, what are you doing here, right? You're wasting your time, right? You know, literally, I was made to feel like you're not on our level, so to speak, right? You know, but I kept on hearing these people, and I'm working with them. Honestly, you know, I worked at Del Taco for 3.5 years, right? So I'm grinding with these people, right? And I'm learning how to work fast food, right? You know, and we're establishing relationships, and I'm hearing them talk about their lives. And I'm just sitting here, just like, honestly, flabbergasted to a certain extent about what these people have to do on a day-to-day basis to make ends meet. And as I hear these stories, I'm like, I'm golden. Are you serious? Right? You know, I got this stuff easy, right? I get to, you know, and I remember at the end when I was finally gonna stop working fast food, the thought in my mind was, I was just motivated by the fact I'm gonna stop it. You know, I think I stopped in August, right? You know, so I'm thinking, August, I'm finally done. And I'm thinking, these people have to do this for the rest of their lives, right? You know, you only have to get to August, right? You know, and it just, for me, it allowed me to put my life into perspective. And I think it's very important that you know, I can't see many people, right? You know, but if you're young, right, you know, regardless if you're young or old, right, you have to put your life into perspective. You have to, right? We have a tendency to always focus on our own problems, right? You know, and if you take the time to pick your head up, you know, to maybe read some books about some other people or actually talk to them, you'll find that you're not the only one suffering. In fact, your problems pale in comparison to the problems of most people. And that was a huge moment, right? You know, or just, you know, a motivating factor. Because like I said, my life was not easy, right? You know, me and the mother of my children are no longer together, but we always had a tumultuous relationship, I'm really honest. So on top of all this stuff, the stress from grad school, I'm dealing with this stuff at home. I have one kid, and then I had the second little baby, and I'm thinking, you know, and I'm like, what am I doing, right? You know, but always when I would get down, I'm like, what am I doing? How am I gonna do this? You know, there was these people who would inspire me. And then there was my family, y'all, right? You know, like I do a lot of DEI work, right? As in that I want to get into, although I'm already at 22 minutes. But I guess what I want to say is what I want to say is that diversity goes far beyond, you know, things or stereotypical things like gender, race, you know, ethnicity kind of things, right? You know, I am a Mexican American kid. I am first gen, right? You know, but I lived a privileged life. I know that, right? You know, we were not rich, y'all, right? My mom didn't work. My dad worked on the farm, literally, right? You know, economically, we were not rich, but we were rich in the most important, we were loved. I grew up in a loving home, straight up. I was showered with love, right? You know, and as I grew up, I realized, because as a child, I thought everybody was, this is everybody's life. It's not. There are people out there, right? You know, even if they have money, but they're not giving no attention. They're not giving love. And I was giving love. I was giving love by my mom, right? You know, not my dad so much, not the physical love, right? You know, but my brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, I was given love. I was raised in a loving home where I did not stress about if I was going to have something to eat. I wasn't stressed if my dad or my mom was going to come home drunk, right? You know, and raging. I was not stressed about whether, you know, was there friction in the home, even though sometimes there was friction, right? You know, but it never got to the level that some of us have dealt with, y'all, right? You know, and and I was blessed. And that's kind of my perspective. I do want to push forward, right? Because I feel like I'm talking way too much, right? But I want to push forward to my perspective on DEI, and I'm simply going to say something that Rich has already heard, right? So I teach a class called American Diversity. And American diversity is mandatory for all bachelor's majors at Columbia Basin College. Meaning, if you're majoring, right, or if you're going for your bachelor's degree, right, because obviously CBC or Columbia Basin College is a community college, so a lot of our students are just getting AAs, but we offer bachelor's too. And so any person who's getting a bachelor's degree, they have to take American D, right, And so I'll get these students that come in, and they're typically older, right, And if I'm really honest, I get more white students in American diversity, right? I teach like Chicano history. I get a lot of Chicanos, right? But American diversity is more diverse in that way. And so they come into class, and they're what am I trying to say? They're very well, they're pissed if they have to take American diversity first and foremost, right? And they're sensitive. They don't know how it's gonna go, right? So they're all on pins and needles, right? And I can see it on their faces on the first Zoom, right? Like these, and so the first thing I tell them, right, is that, and some of them don't like it. In fact, sometimes they write it on my class reviews, right? But I'll tell them straight up, right? I'll tell them, I can't teach you American diversity. I'll even tell them, I don't know how to teach you American diversity, right? And that's because American diversity should not be taught, it should be shared, right? We are all diverse. If I could see your faces, which I can't, right? I'm sure we are a huge, diverse group of people right here, right? We are American diversity right here, right? And I'll literally do that in my Zooms. I'll point it at them all, right? Like, look, American diversity cannot be taught. It must be shared, which means that you are all going to have to share your perspective, your life experiences, because that's how we learn about American diversity. I am one individual, just one, right? And I have had my, my trauma. I have had, people, and, people have been racist to me. I've had those experiences in life, right? I wasn't, as a young man, I remember being at Warden, right? And no offense to nobody, but the Mexican kids were never looked to be valedictorians, right? We were just passed along a little bit, right? So I've had those experiences, but I know that I've been blessed in other ways, right? I've been blessed by the most important thing. I was blessed with love, and with love and support, you can do whatever the heck you want with your life, right? At least in my perspective, right? Or in my opinion. What else am I gonna say? That's 25 minutes, y'all, right? So I can talk more, right? But I'm gonna say, I want to ask, or I want to leave time for questions, right? But I will say this, and please don't think I'm preaching to you. I say this to all my students, right? You have to understand that you have a perspective, right? But if you don't have the courage to share that perspective, it will never be heard, right? And I tell my students, and that's important, right? It's important in this class, right? But it's important in life, right? So I'll tell them, okay, who do you think is going to get the promotion? The person who actually shares their opinions in the work meeting, or the person who just sits there mute because they're too embarrassed or shy or don't have enough courage to share? Who's going to get the promotion? And they answer my question. Well, the person who shares, yeah, of course, right? Because that person took the time and had the courage to say something, right? And so I would say that it's crucial that you develop that courage at some point in your life, sooner rather than later. But I will also tell you this. I didn't say a word in my first 4 years of college, not one word, right? I tell my students, I had stuff to say. I did, right? I vividly remember my stomach would start to hurt because I had something to say, right? I'd have something to say, I'm like, man, no, but I couldn't pick up my hand because I was too shy. I was too insecure, right? And then I remember, I'd have something to say, and then the moment would pass, or somebody else would say my comment. I'm like, man, I said that exactly, I was saying it in my mind, but I didn't have the courage to say it out loud. And I guess what I would say is you can be the most intelligent, the most compassionate, the most insightful person that the world has ever seen. But if you don't have the courage to say it out loud, no one will ever know. And that talent and those abilities will die with you. And I don't believe that's why we have talents and abilities. And we all have talents and abilities. But if you don't, I guess what I would say is the point of talent and ability is to give it all away. Right? At least that's what I'm trying to embrace in my life at 44 years old. That whatever I've experienced in my life, whether it be bad or good, right? The point of all this is to give it away, because I can take nothing with me, right? What I tell my students is, and especially the young folk in here, is that this is your world. It's not mine. I'm 44. If I'm lucky, I got 40 years left, right? It's not my world, right? It's yours. But you're allowing other people to dominate it for you or to run it for you because you don't want to talk or you don't want to be awkward, right? Or you don't want to unmute your mic or whatever, or because you spend 7.5 hours scrolling TikTok on your phone. Let's just be honest, right? You know, and I know that why, because I've checked my students, y'all, right? Literally once a quarter, they'll come in and I'll ask them, open your phone, go to the settings, screen time, give me your time, right? You know, and I'll do averages every quarter. And what was my average last quarter? 7.5 hours. I actually had one student whose weekly average, sorry, my phone's gonna start, or that's my car, y'all. It'll figure it out. Yeah. 1 second. I think I fixed it. Anyway, I don't know where I was, something about phones, but we are what we consume. That's what I would say. Not just in terms of what we eat, but what we put in our minds, right? You know, and ultimately you have a very limited amount of time on this earth. And if you're spending 7.5 hours on this device, scrolling through other people's videos, you make your own choices, right? You know, but I would venture to say it's probably not the best use of your time, right? You know, but ultimately you are all your own selves. And I tell my students the same thing. It is not my job to think for you. I just want you to think, right? I want you to understand that you're not going to live forever, that 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 you do have talent, that you have abilities, that you have a perspective, but that will all die with you if you don't share it, right? You know, or let's just be honest, we're going to die anyway. You understand that, right? You know, we're all going to die, you know, anyway. So I would rather die knowing that I gave it all away, that I got nothing left inside me no more. No more thoughts, no more energy, no more passion. Let it all go, because I can't take none of it with me anyway. And, you know, and so I might as well give it away. And so that's kind of, you know, at 44 years old, and I'm still developing. You should understand that too. You will develop till you die. At least that's my hope. I ain't trying to die. You know, I've read Albert Einstein was living, well, he was reading on his deathbed, literally still reading, still taking in information, right? And I that's inspiring to me. I like that. I don't want to ever stop learning. I'll learn until I die, right? You know, because so what the hell else am I going to do, right? I want to learn. I want to grow. And I don't want to do it necessarily for myself. I want to do it so I can give it away. Because I think that's the point. But I think I'm at 30 minutes. And so at this point, I'm finally going to shut up. Anybody?
Thank you, Professor Martinez. And yeah, we do have time for a few questions. I think Kayla and Becca, you can keep track of that for me if you don't mind. But if anyone has any questions, please go right ahead and ask, or drop them in the chat. I can ask them. Check if we got anything.
I don't have a question, but I have a statement. Is that okay?
It's okay with me, man.
Oh, okay. So hearing your story is a lot like how my life was. I did not pay. I'm 19 right now, and I did not pay attention in high school at all. And in fact, I graduated with below a 1.0 GPA, and right now I stand as student senator at my Tacoma Community College, and I'm running for vice president, and I'm getting my PhD in physics, and I'm here going to Olympia to meet with representatives. Hearing your stories, how you turned your life around, and it's awesome because that's what I'm doing right now, and I really like that.
I appreciate you sharing that. Honestly, yeah. And let's just be honest. I don't think it's only our story. I think it's the story of a lot of people, right? And the story is that it's not where you start, it's where you finish, right? You know, I think that's what I take from it. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. And wherever you're at right now, quite frankly, that's not where you're going to finish, right? But it's up to you to determine where the heck you want to go. And you have to understand what I tell my kids too. It's not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy, right? You know, and no offense to your generation, y'all, right? Because now I can see a few faces, but everybody's looking for the hack. Everybody's looking for the, you know, the easy way. We want that easy money, Mr. Martinez. That's what my students say. We want that easy. And I tell them, I mean, you tell me where that easy money is, because I'm gonna apply and I got a better degree than you, and I want some of that easy money too, right? But the truth is, easy money don't exist. It don't exist, y'all, right? It's gonna be hard. It should be hard. If it wasn't hard, what the hell's the point, right? If it wasn't hard, then no offense, but someone else can get that easy money far before you all. Let's just be honest, right? You know, so if you're looking for the easy way out, what you're gonna find is, I don't know. I'm not gonna finish that sentence. You figure out where you'll find.
Oh, we have another question from Shay, Professor. Go ahead, Shay, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, thanks. It was really great hearing you speak. That was a lot of insight into a lot of things. A lot of doors opened for me just in my head. And when you talk about like courage and the ability to speak up and to speak out about your own thoughts and what you have opinions on, could that be seen as diversity too? Like the amount of courage spread across generations?
right? Or, I think that's a great point that I never really thought about, Shay, right? And that is just, or what I think about is, who has the courage to speak and who doesn't, right? And that's on a gradient, right? Think about, if you think back to a class, who were the people who would raise their hand, who wouldn't raise their hand, right? And that, I don't think it's always racial, y'all, right? I think it's a lot of it's economic too, right? But absolutely, that's a form of diversity. That's how I'm thinking of it right now, at least, right? It's all a form of diversity, right? And I think it has to do with not only confidence, but even if you were raised in a house where you read books, what books help me, because they help me articulate myself. I didn't read as a young person, right? So first and foremost, I didn't have the words to express myself, right? I couldn't develop the confidence because my vocabulary was not there, right? And so through the process of reading, it gave me the vocabulary to articulate what I was feeling inside, which previously I couldn't, right? What I tell my students is those who do not have the vocabulary to express themselves, they use these, right? That's what you use. If I can't say, if somebody comes up to me and says something messed up and I don't have the ability to put them in their place with my mouth, I'm gonna put them in their place with my hands, right? That's what we do, right? Because I can't say nothing to you, right? And what I've learned in my life is I can mess somebody up far better with my mouth than my hands. That's the truth, right? I can put somebody in their place with my mouth. No offense to nobody, but I have done it, right? And shut them up like this. Whereas with my fist, I couldn't have done that, right? I couldn't have done it to the extent, right? We would have still been talking crap. Even after we fought, we'd be talking crap, right? But with my mouth, I can shut somebody up, right? It's amazing the power of words. But if you don't read, if you don't expand your vocabulary, then you will not be able to articulate yourself, right? So it's essential that we do those things simply so we can express ourselves and we are not reduced to these, right? We're not, we're not animals in that way, y'all, right? We were given these huge brains. That's why we exist, right? I tell my students, I ain't got no claws. I ain't got no big old canine teeth, y'all, right? We as a species exist because of this huge thing on our head, right? That doesn't even make sense. Don't you ever seen a child try to walk and, or when they're born, they can't even hold their head up, y'all. We're born with a brain so big, we can't even hold it up, right? This is what allowed us to survive and reach the pinnacle of society, this big old head. And no offense to y'all, many of us ain't even using it, right? This big old freaking thing, right? And we don't even use it, or we use it mindlessly just to be scrolling through other people's crap, right? And I feel that is, I don't know, I don't know in Spanish, the word it's a lástima, que lástima, right? It's like, what's the word for lástima? I don't know, right? But it's it's a travesty, right? That you have this talent and you all have it. We all have it. We're born, we're human beings, right? We're wasting it, scrolling mindlessly away, right? But I'm just as guilty. Please, I'm not, please understand that. I'm not putting you in a box. I'm saying I'm there with you, y'all, right? But I don't know. We can't do that, right? It's a waste.
We have another question from Kathleen. Do we still have time, Caleb?
It's rough, but I think we can have one more. It needs to be the last one, and then just so everyone knows, the last little bit that we're doing storytelling, will be sending out information through email. So if you got to go, we understand. But this has been a great conversation. I don't want to cut it short. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Awesome.
I really like how you said that if you don't use it, it goes away. I used to be really shy, and high school was not my shiniest moment. And then I wouldn't talk in class or anything. And I know a few people have known me on here. And it got me to go into college and to be able to go into groups and stuff. I wouldn't even go into WASA and go into the talking groups. And it took a few people to get me to open up. And I feel like I was trying to live the exact same way. And I had a really rough childhood, but I feel like that's what helped me get where I'm at today. And I like to advocate for the families and the kids, and I'm more into helping the families and stuff. And I got my associates in early education and stuff, and I feel like that really helped. And I agree. If you do the easy way out, it's never gonna help. And you're just cheating yourself. There's no easy button. and there's no easy money.
And there
But
ain't no
I
easy.
do,
No, keep going though. Sorry.
and I just think that it is a good point that when we do go and we do talk to them, that it's just don't be afraid, because it's like just talking to your teachers or your friends, because they've been there. I have some people tell me that they literally started with sleeping in their car. They had nothing. They were having they had debt, and then they couldn't afford to feed their own kids. They might have had a CPS case or whatever, or they might have just had a thing with the state, or they might have just had, hard time just trying to find a dollar, and they lived off of whatnot. So
Absolutely. Well, I applaud you for speaking up, Kathleen, not only in your classes, but even in this Zoom. It's not easy to unmute your mic and speak up, right? And I know we're running out of time. And so I'll leave you with one thing, right? That I do like to share with my students. And that is, we learn when we are uncomfortable. That's the truth, right? You can't choose comfort. If you choose comfort, you will learn nothing, right? That's why it's comfortable, because because you already know that, right? You learn when you're uncomfortable. So you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I think, no offense once again to your generation, but you all are getting real comfortable behind this screen right here, right? That's why you walk around with earbuds. You ain't listening to no music, y'all, right? I know it. You ain't listening to nothing, right? Just avoiding conversation, right? Because it's comfortable. I'm real comfortable behind here. I can avoid the awkwardness of creating conversation. You ain't learning nothing, though. You learn when you're uncomfortable. So you have to embrace the uncomfortableness and throw yourself, not just embrace it, you got to throw yourself into it and understand life is not meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be uncomfortable. That's when we learn. And that's okay, right? You want to be comfortable, that's when we go to bed, y'all. That's when we're comfortable. Get under the covers, right? 8 hours, you're comfortable. You get out of the covers, and now it's time to be uncomfortable. Whether it's cold outside, whether it's rainy, whether it's hot, now it's time to be uncomfortable. It's time to go out inside the world. It's time to find myself, right? And you all are young. But if you don't throw yourself into that situation, you're never going to find yourself, y'all, right? You're not going to find your voice, right? And your voice is there. It's inside you right now, right? Some of us aren't using it yet, but it's there. You can hear it, right? You talk to yourself. I know, right? I know, right? It's okay, right? You talk to yourself. That's your voice. But you're going to have to project that voice outside and not just keep it inside, y'all, right? So I don't want to take too much time, y'all, right? But I don't know. I appreciate those who turn on their cameras, right? If I can help in any way going forward, please let me know, right? But I can tell you that, right? That, and to breathe and smile and understand the world is a beautiful place. I know we're constantly bombarded by all the negativity. I understand that, right? And it's not a perfect world. It's not a perfect country. You got to put it into perspective, right? I'm sitting in the car right now with the sun shining on my face, right? I'm healthy. My kids are healthy. My mom and dad are still alive, right? You gotta pay attention to the good and not just the bad, y'all, is what I'm trying to tell you, right? Gratitude truly is the cure to depression, right? Because it makes you aware of the good things in your life and not just the bad. And what you focus on grows. And so if I just focus on the negative, well, guess what's going to grow? All the negative, y'all, right? And so I try to focus on the good. And sometimes I don't succeed, okay? Understand that. And sometimes you won't either. But that does not change the fact that what we focus on grows. And so I had to learn to focus my mind on the positive, not the negative. That's all I got, though.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm happy you were able to come here and share with us. We really appreciate it. And if anyone has other questions for Professor Martinez, you can go ahead and email me. It's in the chat, and I can forward them to him. And if he has time, he'll definitely answer those for you. We really appreciate you being
No
here with
worries.
us. You shared a bunch of stuff that was very helpful for us.
I appreciate the invite, Richie, right? And so I hope to run into y'all at some point in the future. I'm going to check out, though, right now, get back in that gym, see if I can get my kids home at some point, right? Soon, right? But it's been a pleasure. Take care. But I'm going to check out. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, hello everyone. Just to reintroduce myself, my name's Cassandra and I'm the king.
We can't hear you,
region.
Cassandra.
Oh, can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just to reintroduce myself, I was just gonna say my name's Cassandra. I'm the king, regional coordinator. And I think I also want to just thank Professor Martinez for the talk he gave. It was really moving. I'm just going to be talking a little bit about storytelling. If anyone has any questions, as of now, I can help answer. You can drop them in the chat. If anyone also has to go, we will be sending this over email. Yeah. Are there any questions? If not, we can go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. So, a little bit more about storytelling. I think it's perfect. Professor Martinez put it really well about like pivotal points. And we kind of break that down here in this. I think storytelling is pretty intimidating sometimes, especially when you're trying to advocate for something or your own self. So here's like this is like how I break it down. I think someone just dropped in the chat two forms. If you guys can go ahead and open those, it's kind of like a rubric to help you follow and really build your story. The first thing you're going to want to do is build a hook. For me, that is that I'm a first generation college student and I never really had I didn't really have too much background knowledge on how I would be able to attend university or how I would pay for it. But really doing research has helped me, learn more about the university and opportunities that are available. And then once you give the hook, kind of like who you are and what you're going to be talking about, you want to offer information or any data that you can, whether this be any information towards whatever you're speaking about. So for me, for example, I could talk about how anxious I was learning about financial aid or trying to even fill out like all these financial aid forms or grants, scholarships also. Some other information that I put in my storytelling is how much the average cost of housing is. So for me in my university, in my region, the average like the cost of rent is on average 1,300, and that's solely on rent. So that's pretty hefty amounts. So stuff like the Washington College grant and other scholarships helped me in my experience. Talking about what has helped you personally, like ease your tension on, university or college is really good information that you should bring forward. Another factor is you should always try and carry forward a message. So for me, the message was that I really want to protect student aid and like for example, the Washington College grant or other governmental programs. And then you can put this all together. The forms that are in the chat can help you guys build onto this. I'm not sure if we are going to want to try and do that now, if we just want to. Um,
I think due to time,
mhm.
we'll let you guys, please download those and they should be fillable. You should be able to type onto them once you download them. And we have contact information on the next slide. So please reach out to your coordinators or our team at WASN and yeah, keep this dialogue going and keep an eye out for emails from us in regards to your Olympia days. We can stay on for a little while longer in case anyone wants to stay and ask questions or talk through little bits, but yeah. This was a great event, guys. Great turnout too. Engagement.
Agreed.
What did you even do? What did you even talk about? You didn't even do nothing, did you?
Did someone say something, Kayla? Sounds like it.
Probably in my background, my family.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. So if any of you that are still on have any additional questions, about Olympia, about sharing your story, anything whatsoever, anything that's on your mind about maybe some things happening, certain changes happening right now, around us in the world today with different stuff going on, go ahead and feel free to share that if you'd like.
I got something.
Go for it.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't I'm not a first gen student or um I I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't have there was a lot of support like on the path to college for me from like family and like lots of my family has gone to college. And so it was kind of just like a thing you do. And so I just went and I had a lot of help on the way and everything. And now I'm kind of just here by myself, like still supported by everyone, but it's more by yourself when you're actually in college. Um, and kind of like what I just put in the chat is like the experiences that I'm having here um are like super impactful, I feel like for me, and they're really like elevating my life in ways I didn't even know could happen. And so for someone who hasn't had, let's say, a difficult path getting to college or getting to higher education, um, I feel like something that I could touch on more is the experiences that can happen when you are in college and how those really affect you. Um, I don't know. Is that something I could talk about at Olympia Days?
Yeah, that's a great thing to talk about. I mean, I had a very similar experience. I'm not a first generation student either. My family was quite supportive, and I had a lot of options for schools that I could have gone to, but there were a lot of financial issues still because even for like a pretty well-off middle-class family, college is ridiculously expensive. But I definitely had the same experience where I didn't really feel like struggling to get into college was something I could talk about and put my voice to. So my story is also about experiences that I've had here. Um, Less financial and more just, I mean, mine is on return on investment and sort of did my major give me what I expected to get out of it? And I know you're a freshman, so you might not really be able to talk about that yet, but I think your idea is a great one. And that provides a really good contrast because I know a lot of people's stories are this is something that I struggled with, and I think there needs to be more support in this area. And then you're bringing a story that's like, this is something great that I think we should keep, and that also really adds to the idea of it's important to get everybody that access to higher education so they can have those experiences.
Evan, got your hand raised.
Let me lower my hand. Okay. So I might be a little confused on this, but I think what the professor was talking about on diversity, it had me thinking, and I do believe that our experiences are important, and the most important thing is there's a huge diversity in the generations that are here at our school, and just because you are well off financially or you have that support doesn't mean that you're still a part of a generation that's going to bring a better future, like technology wise and political wise. And I think that's something we do have to talk about. I don't know if we could, like, if that counts, but I feel like that is a huge part of being diverse is that we're passing a torch to the next generation. And that's something that needs to be understood. It's not like whether you're black or white or male or female or rich or not. It's how can we pass this torch to the next generation so that way we can keep going. And I think that's something that's important.
Yeah,
That's all.
absolutely. And that's, like our legislature has done a lot of great work already. And I think that's part of like our key messaging this year is protecting the progress that has been made, and let's not move backwards because of what you just mentioned. Like we still have people to get to and through this process and be able to um yeah, have those experiences and contribute to our economy and have better lives for themselves, all of that stuff. And yeah, it's great to mention, what's going well, what was helpful for you. And I think also a good point, a good thing to keep in mind is like the fact that not everyone has that and how important it was. So like how can we support the people that don't have those support systems already? What can we do as a state to help support everyone? And um, yeah. Anyone else got anything to add?
Uh, but I just want to say, so in a sense, we're kind of saying like a no man left behind type deal. Like we're saying everybody has to come with us to the future and everybody needs this proper foundation. Is that what we're shooting for?
Yeah. And actually, I think that language is actually somewhere in there that it's no student left behind.
Awesome.
Yeah. You'll see it in the flashcards that we have. Yeah, so number one priority for 2025, protect the progress we've made in expanding access to education after high school, reducing financial barriers, and recovering from challenges created by the pandemic. We're urging the legislature to build on the funding students receive for financial aid. No group of students should receive less than they have in recent years. Oh, that's not exactly what I was looking for, but I know I think like it stems from that language was used in like that language has been used in legislation in the last few years.
And as another just thought on your guys' unique stories is that you may have experienced things at school that affected you because you felt they were wrongs. You may have experienced someone with a disability or language impairment or some other issue that they weren't getting the help that they needed. And you can also speak to those issues, whether you have personally are going through it or not. If you've seen some things that affected you in a way that you feel like, I didn't like that, you can bring those up as well, just as another idea for you all as well, because I don't know if any of you considered that. But those are all things. Now, I think Becca's brought this up a lot, though, is we need to also understand the difference between an institutional issue versus an educational issue at the state level. So if it's about disability ramps at a school or to get into a building, that's not what we're focused on because that's at the school level. But if it's about having opportunities for people with disabilities on a state level to help them in school, because you saw from a personal student that had this deal where there was no sign language interpreter for them to go to class, so they had to drop out, or some issue. As just an example. I mean, there could be a million. But I just want to throw that out there as well, that we also advocate for others that maybe can't for themselves.
Yes. And my comment on like, what is it, institutional versus what is the whole, whether it's the campus's problem or not, but like that the example you used, Richie, is perfect, right? Of like, I'm pretty sure there is some kind of law that was put into place that all public spaces, or especially state-funded institutions, are required to make sure that spaces are accessible. And so it's part of keeping your institution accountable that like legislators need to know if the laws that have been passed aren't being implemented. And the only way for them to know is people to speak up about it.
Another example on that note is, so things can start out institutional and then move up to legislative. So if you think about free hygiene products, how that gets started is a lot of students were talking about it at an institutional level, and their SGAs were willing to pay a whole bunch of money to put free hygiene products in bathrooms. And then that went to the state level, and then it is something that is now required.
How would we go about bringing more requirements like that? Like, would we band together as students, or like, would we just go right and just speak to the legislative? Like, does it start with banding together, or does it start with speaking with someone?
So if you don't mind, Kayla, we're advocating for funding for higher education, right? And different issues and barriers that we face. Financial equity and financial aid, continuing with the Washington state grant. And I think some of the other issues that we were trying to advocate for was what is the word? Career counselors and college counseling to help us navigate through school, which I've personally had some issues with that I definitely want to speak on. But what I didn't know until actually this year was that when we advocate to the politicians and the legislators, some of our stories, they remember us specifically. Like you, Evan, when you said this, it really struck a chord with me. So when they go on the budget for a specific thing, they will sometimes keep it or increase it because of the story you shared. And then though it isn't just a budget, but also some of those things that we do collectively become laws. And I got to see some of those happen that Wasen shared with me at the beginning of the summer. And I hope to be able to have something like that for you guys via email, maybe after different stuff comes out, if it relates, because our voices are powerful and they do affect different initiatives and laws that are passed moving forward. So yes, but if you mean specifically for yourself, I mean that's a worthwhile cause, and if you're passionate about something, you should. But for us, it's focused on higher education and things in in completing school, getting through school, and barriers that we face, whatever they might be.
Yeah, and I would say some of it, right, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. Like some legislators, well, I guess typically a lot of the time it will be a group or an organization that asks a legislator to sponsor a bill, right? And we are partners with other organizations that actually do lobby and create bills in that way. And we can get you connected to them. Like if you subscribe to our emailing list, then like we try and send out updates on like what others are doing, opportunities that come up. And you'll also probably meet some of them at Olympia. But then there's also like, it's happened before where you are in a meeting with a legislator and then that legislator is like, well, I'm working on a bill that is towards this. Can I have your number, your email, and like, can you help me and come and testify? And also, we now have training videos on how to testify on a bill and take a stance on a bill. It's on our website. Yeah, it's a whole process. And like the storytelling, crafting your story that you're doing for Olympia Days is very similar to what it'll be like when you testify. So you can dig more into that material. And I think I didn't want to bring it up right now because it might make it confusing in the sense that like we're not allowed to lobby, right? We shouldn't be bringing up specific bills, but like our organization knows that the bills that are being talked about right now, and we can share that information with you guys, right? And we are planning to do that. You can also go out and look for yourself, but yeah, there's a lot of ways that it kind of starts, but it definitely helps to have like a group together to go about it.
So long answer, yeah. It starts with you and wanting to make that change. And then you just find the people who are passionate about the same things and then building the cohort that way.
What school do you go to, Evan?
I go to Tacoma Community College.
Okay. I don't know if they are still affiliated with Washington Student Association. That is our like big partner who is a lobbyist group, but they're made up of a bunch of different campuses and their student government. And they kind of just like bring the power and numbers together to do that work. So I'm gonna look it up right now to see if TCC is a part of that, but
Well, if TCC isn't, I'd love to try to get it a part of it.
thanks. Yeah, I know they've had some struggles with the community colleges. It's this year. And as you've heard, like cutbacks and stuff, it's been difficult. But I think it's a great thing that you're being a part of this, and you'll meet them. Like the executive director, Nancy, will probably be there on Wednesday when we're at the Capitol. We're going to be in their office actually. So you're going to meet some of them and be able to talk to them and see kind of like what they have going on right now and see if anything's applicable to you. And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I get to go back to back. I get to go with you guys on the 29th and then my student government on the 30th.
Nice. Yeah. So you're going to get to know these legislators pretty well.
Yeah. I'm still nervous though.
It's awesome. That's what it's all about, honestly, is making those connections and building those relationships to where like they know who you are, they're happy to see you, and that's kind of how you can the conversations just get easier after that. You just have to, the first time is always the difficult one. Or the most difficult. I still get nervous sometimes. I'm a shy person. I'm an introvert, but when I'm passionate, I'm willing to step out. And it's good. Like Professor Martinez was saying, it's good to, nothing grows in the comfort zone. So. Okay. Anything else that we got? Let people get onto their Saturdays. And our team is going to stay and just chat for a little bit. So, Candace and Evan, thank you for staying and chatting with us longer. And we look forward to seeing you guys very soon.
Of course.
Yes.
I'm so excited.